We are live. Yes. Hey, everyone. Hey, all. Welcome. Welcome to Hack Shack Studios. I'm your host for the next couple hours. I will be your host. My name is Thibert. I am a comic book professional, 35 years this coming year, or I guess the end of this year, it will be 36 years. I think it's more. I've been working as a professional for longer than that. So like 35, 36 years. I'm old. Oh my gosh, getting up there. So yeah, today is a monumental occasion. I am going to be bringing page 60, the last page of Chrono Mechanics, drum roll, brrr, last page of Chrono Mechanics I am going to be finishing. I have 3 panels here, and I think I'm going to stay on until I finish all 3 panels. So I've done some of my pencil details on them, and it should just be a matter of inking them. So I think about 2 hours or so, I should be able to finish this. May go longer. I do have some reinforcements coming in, reinforcements in the form of albino thunderbuns. He's going to come in and try to keep this party crazy and keep things moving, because once I get into kind of focus mode on the work, I start talking into the drawing board. I don't talk into the microphone anymore, and I kind of lose my place. So I think this will be good. This will be a fun exercise. And look at this. I just got a sandwich. I just got a sandwich for my lovely wife, Pamela. Hey, Pamela, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Yes.
Art's going to be chomping in your ear, eating a tuna sandwich.
Yeah, you got to keep your strength for these things. You got to keep the energy up. So we have Wizard the Wart. This is not Wizard the Wart. This is Warzord, or Warzard, the Board Time Lord. You got to pay attention when you read that one. I have to slow down. I'm a tad dyslexic too. We have Cam. Hello, 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 hello. And we have Gaming, or what? Trademark. You know, this is a smart businessman. He trademarks everything, and that's good. He's got a good future. Hello. We got Gus Tyler Bush. What's up? Ooh, I like this. Perfect. 2 hours is how much time I've got. This could work out. This will work out. So we got a hi, Mrs. Thibert. Victor is in the house. What is this? Thrilla Art? I like that. Hey, Art. Here, everybody. No problem, Art. Yeah. I really have to slow down when I read because of my dyslexia. We have Mr. K in the house. Hello, everyone. Yeah, you know what? If I have like numbers, like if it says like 848, like for a phone number, I'll go 484. Like I get all the numbers all mixed up. So here, there we go. Yeah, I'm back. I hit the wrong button. It's right next to this button. Like I said, I got to slow down. I'm not good at multitasking. All right. So I did that, and now I'm going to invite the reinforcements in. Here we go. Here we go. All right. I believe Joe has his invite now. No, Boomer, no. So am I still live? I should still be live. It says it. I just kind of temporarily hit the wrong button, so I should be back. Yeah, it's a good sandwich too. It's tuna fish. Wow. Yeah, so I guess I'm still going here. That's good. All right. So I'm going to show you the page I'm going to be working on if I can hit the right button instead of the wrong button. All right, here we go. That's not it. All right, here we go. All right. This is the monumental page 60. So this is the last page of the book. It's a little somber, but it picks back up, but I can't show you that part. So I'm going to get my nib together and start inking this bad boy. So if you don't know, my weapon of choice is a Hunt 102, and it is a dip pin, a crow quill, and it is a pretty cool tool. And then I use Pelican. So I usually, at the beginning of my ink sessions, I put a little bit of fresh ink in just to get things going and flowing. Going and flowing. I think we got somebody. I see somebody here. Let me click this. Yes, we do have somebody. We have albino thunderbuns in the house here. Uh-oh, I think you need to turn your sound down or something. I'm hearing an echo. Joe, can you hear me? Is that Edgar Winter? Who is that guy in the image?
Sorry, trying to get the sound straightened out.
Oh, there you go. I can hear you now.
Yeah, I gotcha.
There's a little bit of an echo, though. I can hear myself. Can you guys hear that, or is it just me?
Okay, it should be gone. How's that?
I'm going to talk now, and then we'll be quiet, and we'll see if we can hear myself back. Oh, it's perfect.
Great.
All right. Hey,
Sorry
welcome.
about that. Momentary technical difficulty.
Oh, no problem. I actually just clicked out of the whole live chat earlier, so you're in good company.
Well, you are correct, sir. That is Edgar Winter in my avatar pic.
Yes, he looks very, very cool right there. It looks like somebody did some airbrush work on him.
One of the two greatest albinos in rock history.
This is true. Doesn't he have a brother, and his brother's albino as well?
Yep, Edgar and Johnny.
Johnny Winter was which one was the one that did that song Frankenstein?
That's Edgar.
That is the Edgar.
Yep, they did Frankenstein, and there you can find a video on YouTube, and it shows Edgar playing all those different instruments and then playing his amp as an instrument.
What is he turning knobs and stuff, feeding back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was the decade of the like keyboard wizards. Remember, like the keyboards were all like they were like magic. They were wizards, and a lot of times they wore capes and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they started going from keyboard to keytar, where they'd have the strap and the neck like a guitar neck on it, and guys would be up there playing keyboard.
Oh yeah. So they could be in the thick, so they didn't have to be behind the scenes anymore.
Right. They wouldn't be
Out there with the guitar players. Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't be tied down to a keyboard stand. They could be jumping around and getting wild and crazy.
Bunch of glory hogs. You know what? Rock and roll isn't meant for keyboards, man. It's guitars and drums. Get those wizards out of here. No, I'm just
Yeah. Send them to the pinball hall.
the pinball wizard. Yeah, Elton John.
Let
Yeah,
them be.
it was weird because they were like the wizards, the keyboard wizards, and then there were like the bar piano players like Billy Joel,
Mhm.
or like Elton John was more of like, the bar kind of piano.
Right.
And then there were the wizards like, Edgar Winter, or what was the other one that played for Yes? He was a famous keyboard player.
Oh, the name escapes me. I'll have to look it up real quick. Unless
Yeah,
someone in the chat can beat me to it.
there was a whole slew of those guys, man. What is this? Cam says, darn right, piano and rock makes me want to heave. And then he says, Billy Joel is the exception. There's always an exception, man. So for everything we hate, there's usually one thing. There's one exception that will make you contradict yourself.
So it says the original keyboard player for Yes was Tony Kaye.
All right, Tony Kaye, I think he also came back in the band, but I think the wizard was somebody else.
Rick Wakeman.
Rick Wakeman, that's it. Yeah, Rick Wakeman looks a lot like Edgar Winter. He's got like the like really light colored blonde hair,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he wore a cape. Can you find an image of those guys with the cape, and we'll share it with the chat?
Yeah, I'm looking for a good one here. This one they've got their Aladdin pants, but I don't see any capes.
It would have to be early stuff because I think they were kind of ditching some of that later on.
Do you have any favorite songs from Yes?
I have a couple. I never know names of songs though, but I think there were a couple of those guys that had the wizard moniker, and I think that Rick Wakeman was one of them.
Well, Roger Daltrey was definitely wearing capes for a while.
No, he was not.
Oh, he sure was. I'll find pictures for you.
He wore like that jacket with the frilly stuff off the sleeve.
Well, yeah, he wore the fringes a lot.
The fringes, yeah. But I don't remember a cape. You know who sported a cape, I think, is James Brown, didn't he? Or was it
absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they would put the cape over him, like at the end of the set, like to calm him down. And then he goes, "Oh, no," and he'd throw off the cape and then he'd come back on the stage.
Too hot in the hot tub, too cold in the pool.
Ha!
Get back.
Good times. So, Albino, I was telling everybody in the chat that I'm going to stay live until I finish these 3 panels. So I know you have a hard out at 2. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got to run at 2.
Yeah. So if it goes longer, don't worry. Just kind of bow out.
Okay.
No problem. Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to give you a high-res pic of old Rick Wakeman with his wizard cape performing keyboard magic.
Are you kidding?
I am completely serious.
This is a show, you guys, where we just give. We're givers. We're always giving.
We're givers, not takers.
We're not takers. We're here to entertain you.
We like to receive, but we prefer to give.
Always giving. So I didn't even ask how you been. How you been?
Pretty good. Trying to take care of some business stuff in the midst of the wife going through some medical stuff. So that's been kind of difficult, but she's doing well. And so it's just a kind of, a constant juggling act.
Yeah,
I'm sure you can remember when Mandy was growing up, and, it's just a constant trying to manage time and prioritize and reprioritize as things change and all that.
yeah. It's sometimes it's hourly.
Yes, definitely.
Well, I'm glad. Life is always a combination of good and bad, and a lot of times they happen simultaneously. That's why you got to try to focus on the good as much as possible, because sometimes it's fleeting. Well, a lot of times it's fleeting.
That's a fact, Jack.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily pray at the dinner table, at night, but we did force ourselves to give like thanks, or like what we were thankful for that day. And I think it was because, you can get caught up, especially when you're young, in like, oh, this went bad, that went bad, all those type of things. So what we would always do is to try to focus on something good that happened that day. Um, because it's really easy to get caught up into the negative or the bad.
Yeah.
Because trust me, it does happen. So do you have that Rick Wakeman?
Yeah, I've got the picture, and I was trying to figure out if there's a way that I could stream it on my tablet without
If you go to
my
screen share, and then I'll click on the screen share, and it will share it with the chat.
Yeah, last week when I tried this, it killed my
Oh, did it?
processing speed, because I'm on my tablet. One of the things I wanted to try and do this last week was put together a PC designed for video broadcasting and publishing, and I wasn't able to get to that. So I'm hoping to do that in this coming week.
Well, if it's going to crash your system, don't worry about it. It would be fun to see, though.
Well, let me see.
If you send me the link, maybe I can share it if it doesn't work.
Okay.
Because after teasing it for the last 10 minutes, I think we owe it to the chat.
Oh yeah, we definitely got to show it. Okay, I'm gonna click share screen.
Okay.
And then I'll jump to the picture.
Okay. So it should show up on mine, and then I can just click it and then share it.
Okay, so you should be getting the feed now.
Okay, I don't have it yet. Yeah, I still don't have it.
Let's see. Okay, how about now?
There it is. Okay, here we go. After teasing for the last 10 minutes, you guys, the wizard, the keyboard wizardry of Rick Wakeman. Here we go. Holy shit. Oh, that's the old Rick Wakeman. He brought the case back.
Yes, he did.
That's hilarious. He's twisting the little knob there. I think that's when they can like distort it, isn't it sometimes like those old keyboards, those Moog synthesizers, they would have those sounds like
yeah, and they
do that with the knob.
Right. It was all analog, so you would manually adjust the potentiometers, and sometimes the quote unquote newer ones would have sliders, so then you would use your sliders to adjust your levels or your sound effects or whatever. But that one that he's got his left hand on, yeah, that was all knobs and I think push button switches, if I remember correctly.
Is the knob, does it speed it up and slow it down? Is that what it does?
I never got to use them. Long ago, I used to do some sound mixing and recording, but it was on, this would have been in the mid 90s, and no, I take that back. Late 90s and into 2000. 2001 maybe was the last time I did any of that stuff. And we had modern equipment. But I remember talking to a sound engineer, and he was telling me about that stuff. And so I think that, with the setup that he's got there, that keyboard in the wooden cabinet, I think he's got his push buttons for on and off, and then he's got his knobs for dialing in his levels. And so I think he probably is using those for both audio and for pitch. And then whatever effects he's got going on, I'm sure he's using some of those knobs for controlling the gain for the amount of distortion or whatever it is the effect is applying.
Very interesting. It's weird when you listen to the sound effects and stuff from the original Star Wars. You definitely can hear some of the influence of those, like Moog and like those early synthesizers. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like he's got a Roland that he's playing with his right hand.
I love the way those Roland synthesizer guitars sound. I think that Owner of the Lonely Heart, that guitar sound was like through one of those Roland synthesizer guitars. Yeah, I'm not that hip on like all the technology of music, but I am fascinated with it.
Yeah, I got to do for a little while. I got to do some sound mixing and recording, and I worked with this sound engineer who would go to shows, and he was contracted. He was a freelancer who would go to shows for local radio stations, and he would record the shows for the station, and then they would do playbacks, periodically. And so he had an RV that he converted into a mobile recording studio. And you ever gone down to Humphreys by the Bay in San Diego?
I think I have been there. Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Okay. I think there's a place that's similar in LA, either in LA or Orange County, but it's basically a concert venue where you've got a nice restaurant, and then outside there's sort of a mini amphitheater type feel where they've got a stage and seating and everything that's overlooking. It's literally right next to the water. So you've got the sailboats that are going by, and it's a pretty cool place for a show.
And we rock shows there. They only have nice shows there. They don't have like big rock shows, do they?
No, they'll get rock shows, and you'd be surprised. Okay, so when my buddy, the sound engineer, when he asked me to help him work that show, I thought it was just going to be kind of a little rinky-dink thing. He told me it was going to be Lyle Lovett and his big band.
Oh, that'd be cool, yeah.
I thought, oh, okay. And at the time, I didn't know anything about Lyle Lovett other than he married Julia Roberts. And he got made fun of in the press because she was way out of his league.
Right.
So I didn't know anything about him musically other than he was some country guy. So we go down there, and we run all our cables and everything and get set up for the show. And I'm back in the RV with my engineer buddy and I think it was the president of the radio station. And so my buddy is kind of walking him through all of the process of getting the equipment dialed in. And he's like, this is why we do this is why we do that. And it's going to sound great on your station when you do the playback because of blah, 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 blah. And I'm kind of helping him get the last little
So
tweak.
this wasn't only live for people that were at the show. This was simulcast through the radio.
Yeah, so we were doing a simulcast through the radio station, but we were also recording the show so that the station could play it back at a later date.
Okay.
So it was a pretty involved setup, but I was just there to basically be an extra pair of hands to help out with the grunt work. My buddy, the engineer, was getting all of the fine adjustments handled, and so I'm in there in the mobile recording studio, just kind of kicking back. My job's done, waiting for the show to start, and all of a sudden, the show starts with a bang, and I'm thinking, I thought Lyle Lovett was a country guy, and so there are all of these people that are cheering and hooting and hollering and all of this stuff, and so I go outside, and he was a country singer, but he did all kinds of other stuff too, and I had no idea. And so it was a lot of fun. It was like a cross between, he really did have a big band there. I mean, it wasn't just a play on words. He legit had a jazz band with enough players to qualify as a big band in any jazz hall. And so he was kind of playing a combination of country, blues, jazz, and specifically big band jazz. So it was great. I mean, he had gospel backup singers. I mean, he had blended at least 4 different genres of music to do this tour that he was on. And I can't remember what it was called, or else I'd send you a link, and I'm sure there's some footage of it somewhere. But it was funny. He had this one song that was real bluesy, and his backup singers, they were essentially doing a call and response type of thing where he was playing a what would you call it? He was playing a playa. He was supposed to be a big man who was out playing the field, and the backup singers were kind of playing the part of his girlfriend. And it was funny, there's a part in the song where the chorus, if I remember correctly, was my girl's so ugly, and then he would give a line, and each time he sang the chorus, it would be my girl's so ugly, but then the line would be a little different. And then he gets to the basically the big crescendo of the song, and he says, my girl's so ugly, and then all of the band stops on the downbeat. There's dead silence, and then all the backup singers, hands on their hips, turn and look at him, and he looks at them, and they say, well, you ugly too. And then the band comes in, and they finish out with the big finish. It was great, man. He put on a great show. I never would have guessed it.
Man, you had me. That was very suspenseful because, he is like an ugly guy, so he ends up turning it on himself. That's pretty
right.
Good.
Yeah. The song started out, and everybody in the audience, and you can tell everyone in the audience is thinking, what are you talking about? Your girl's so ugly, man. Look in a mirror.
Yeah, exactly.
But he set us all up, and then he, comes in, and you see that it's self-deprecating song, and it was great. He's a showman for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason those guys are where they're at, even if they're ugly. And I don't think music, it matters if you're ugly or not. You know what I mean? Like, if you can connect with people and you're lead singer, there's been a lot of ugly lead singers out there, especially in rock and roll. So.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look at Rick Ocasek. Isn't he the poster boy for marrying above his weight class?
Holy crap! Paulina, she is gorgeous. like it's weird. Like she flies under the radar as far as gorgeous women, but man, she is gorgeous.
I'm gonna find a picture of her and him standing next to each other for the benefit of the chat.
Just to give everybody hope, or to encourage people to be a lead singer of a band.
Yeah, if you guys, if you think there's no hope for you, believe me.
Front a rock band.
Front a rock band, and you can land any lady you like. Make sure I spell his name right.
Rick Ocasek or Cossack. Cossack. That guy's ears shoot out almost straight.
Yeah, I'm convinced that in the old days of analog TV, he could adjust his picture by moving his ears.
Yeah, he is like a human version of Dumbo, the flying elephant. I bet you he can fly.
I believe I can fly.
With those ears. Do you think they had children?
I'm sure they did.
Paulina? Because the sad thing is, do you remember, I guess she had some work done, but Billy Joel and Chrissy Brinkley, they had that kid, and that poor kid took after Billy Joel. And I always thought, like, if your mother was considered to be the most gorgeous woman in the world, and you were born less than perfect, that would be hard to live down.
Yeah, they had a few kids, I think.
Well, there's the one daughter that I think she's got a musical career now.
I want to say
really talented, and I think she had some work done on her face. So she's not bad looking, but when she was before the work, she definitely looked like Billy Joel.
Was that Stella?
I don't know what her name is.
I'll find out.
She had a pretty good transformation, and I think she has somewhat of a singing career.
Alexa Ray Joel.
Alexa, that's it.
Well, if you want to share my screen, I've got a picture of Paulina and Rick before he passed away.
Before Rick did?
Yeah, he died recently.
So both those singers for the Cars are gone now. The bass player singer and then Rick Ocasek or Kasich.
Yeah, Rick Ocasek.
He looks a little like a big-eared Alice Cooper.
Yeah. And can you imagine if he didn't have that wig or whatever that thing is that was on his head?
Yeah, that dead animal carcass. Yeah, what's wrong with this picture, right? That's crazy. And she's probably at least 20 years younger than him, too, it looks like in this photo.
I think that's about right. She was listed at 54 when he died.
Our Central Scrutinizer, is this the right one? Says that she dumped Rick after 30 years.
Okay. I'm sure that he probably couldn't be satisfied with,
Yeah, it was his choice.
With his choice of ladies when there's so many others out there in the great wide world.
Christy Brinkley still looks good. She's a vampire. Man, she sucked Billy Joel dry. I don't think they're together.
No, they divorced a long time ago.
I wonder who made more money in that relationship.
Well, you were talking about...
Oh, there's Alexa, yeah. Ooh. Well, not bad, but not good if your mother's Christy Brinkley.
I was going to say, she definitely looks like her dad.
Yeah. Uh, poor girl.
Yeah, when I was growing up, Christy Brinkley. I mean, if Bo Derek was the it girl of the 70s, then Christy Brinkley was the it girl of the 80s.
Wasn't she in the Vacation movie?
Yeah, she was driving was it a Ferrari on the
Yeah.
freeway, and Clark Griswold is looking down at her.
Yeah. The fantasy girl.
Mm-hmm. And then she meets up with him in the swimming pool later on.
Yeah, she did. She even had bad taste in that movie.
Yeah.
You know what? Women just like a guy that can make them laugh. Wasn't that the big old lie that they were telling everybody? You know what? Women just want a man that can make them laugh. Okay. I don't think that's quite true, but
Well, I think it's true that most women do want a man who can make them laugh, but it's not the only thing.
yeah, it might be one of, 100 things that they want. Poor Alexa. Yeah, I always thought like, I was just thinking, she's in college or whatever, and they're like, "Who are your parents?" My dad's Billy Joel, and they're like, "Yeah, I can see that." And it's like, my mom's Christy Brinkley, and then they're like, "What?" What? She is not.
Yeah, for me it was Christy Brinkley and then Kathy Ireland.
Yeah, she was the other it girl. I don't know how she aged, but
Very, very well.
oh, that's cool.
Not only that, but she turned her modeling career into essentially $1 billion makeup, jewelry, lifestyle brand type of company.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, it was. When she retired from modeling, she essentially left the public eye completely, but apparently at some point during her modeling career, she started going to school for business and making connections and setting up a professional network outside of modeling. And smart girl, because as soon as she stepped away from modeling, she just stepped full time into whatever business interest she had and really, really took off and became one of the first. I think probably her and Oprah were the two kind of public figures that really became mega successful business people.
Yeah, Oprah is one of the richest, not just black, but female as well.
Yeah, I remember seeing a list a few years ago talking about the wealthiest business women, and she was topping the list. I think it was her, and then the second and third place ladies were, heir to some food empire like Heinz or Kellogg or whatever the parent company was, something like
Right.
that.
It wasn't.
It was inherited wealth. It was not self-made wealth.
It wasn't Hillary Clinton.
No. I'm sure that the Clintons have plenty of off the books money.
I bet you most of their money is off the books.
I think that's a safe bet that most politicians have most of their money off the books.
Yeah, I don't think politicians like to be on those Forbes top 10, richest people lists. I think it's for some people it's a conflict of interest. Like when you hear like the man of the people, Barack Obama, and then you hear about his $1 billion houses and
Right.
all of his earnings, and then you're like, wait a minute, a man of the people.
Well, the one that cracks me up the most is Bernie Sanders.
Oh yeah,
because he tells everyone he's a democratic socialist and this and that, and he's in it for doing good and not for racking up, campaign contributions from mega corporations and so on and so forth. And if you like Bernie, more power to you. But I thought it was hilarious when, after it was proven that the DNC and some of Hillary's campaign people anyway, they were involved in sandbagging Bernie's supporters who were trying to vote for him in the last election. And when all of that information came out, I think it was the next week, it was announced that Bernie had just bought a brand new lake house in, I don't know, is he Vermont? I think he's in Vermont.
Yeah.
And it was some multi-million-dollar lake house.
Yeah, that's bad timing. He should have known better than that, right? In an active campaign,
It was interesting how right after he, was saying, we've been vindicated and, blah, 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 that there was wrongdoing. And then he stops talking about it. And a few days later, it's announced that he buys this multi-million-dollar lake house. Not that there was a payoff involved. We're not saying that.
Well, the reason I always think that
it looks a little suspicious.
Yeah, when people are like overly like, oh yeah, socialist, whatever, like it's a good thing, they're in favor of it. And like I guess in concept or in the pitch, it sounds good, like all the wealth gets distributed, or distributed throughout, and everybody, does well, and all that kind of, selling points. But then if you look at it, like all those socialist countries, all socialism, there's still rich people in that community, in that society. Like if it really did work, then how come there are rich people? There shouldn't, by by their standards of what socialism is, shouldn't there not be any rich people at all?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that even from the early days of communism and socialism, when it was made known that there were, in each country where it was tried, there was always this elite class at the top, and it would always be denied publicly, but then every once in a while someone would offer proof, and then they would get disappeared the next day.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't get talked about anymore. I mean, when I was a teenager, I was a lefty and pretty far to the left, but even back then I always knew, and I used to tell people, communism, socialism, it may look good on paper, but every single time it's been tried, it's resulted in, horror for the people who are living under that system. So I just can't go that far.
Yeah, if you had a perfect society that you could, and that's why those socialized countries, the governments are very, very militant. They're very, very like oppressive, because they have to be, because if you step out of line, socialism doesn't work at all. Like if you step out of line here, it's kind of like, oh, well, you're a rebel. It's like sometimes you can even be a hero, but there you step out of line, man, that's it. You're done, because it doesn't work if they have any kind of freedoms like that to speak out or to go in a different direction. You just can't have it. The government falls apart. The idea falls apart when you have that. So you cannot really have a true socialized country or idea unless everybody is completely in lockstep. You know what I mean? Or the government will heavy-handedly knock you back to where you have to be.
Right. Well, I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures or video of what's been going on in China, a communist country. And
yeah, parts of it.
So in parts where people tried to, walk around without a mask over their face because of this coronavirus.
Right.
or they tried to do, I forget, there was a couple of other restrictions they were supposed to be following, and there were a couple people who weren't. And there were these video clips of these cops just walking up to people, no warning or anything, just walk up, basically slap these flex cuffs on, which are kind of like zip ties or wire ties,
Right.
that are used as handcuffs, and then they attach a leash to the person, and then they walk the person on the leash
Wow.
out in front of everyone else in public until there's a nice little crowd, and then they publicly berate and denigrate them and make them, prostrate themselves before the cops and metaphorically before the people and the government and everything else. And that's if they let them off easy.
Right. So at best, you get publicly humiliated. At worst, what? Criminal?
They'll bring you downtown, and you may or may not be seen again, depending on the depth of your
Criminal activity.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Maybe we should start looking up to that form of government.
I think that for people who really embrace hardcore leftist ideology, and the same would be true if somebody did the same thing for hardcore right wing, such as Mussolini's fascist government in Italy,
right,
prior to World War II. I think it just has to come from an ignorance of history, not being aware that these types of extremist governments, very authoritarian, have been tried, and in every single case, it's resulted in horrible consequences for the populace, which are the people who are supposedly going to benefit from these authoritarian governments.
Right. Yeah, I don't think there's much. There are many examples of it, clearly working. So I don't understand. I understand the politicians wanting it. I don't understand the people backing it, because like if you were a politician or you were in the government, socialism is ideal, right? Like that's perfect for you.
Yeah, if you're one of the power brokers, it's probably a great gig.
Yeah, but
until
I don't understand where. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, until you get shanked by the next guy that wants your job.
Right. But the people, I don't understand why they're so gung-ho about it.
Well, I know that in Venezuela, Hugo Chavez got a lot of traction in the beginning when he took over, because he was promising people a lot of free stuff, and he was able to deliver on it in the beginning based on the oil revenues that Venezuela was able to bring in. But his big downfall, among many, many other reasons, was that he gambled on future oil revenues to pay for a lot of stuff he was trying to fund in the present. And then when oil prices dropped severely, those potential revenues never came in, and it cratered their economy.
Oops.
And then we just went from bad to worse. And so Venezuela, until their economy cratered, they kept being held up as an example of socialism done the right way. Then, unfortunately,
socialism based on, this one success that the country had,
which, quite frankly, was a capitalistic endeavor.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. I guess giving it back to the people, if that's what happened, then that's where but it was still capitalism that gave them or put them in that position that they could think more socialistic.
Right. Well, and that's what China did. They struggled for decades trying to get a healthy economy under strict communism, and they were never able to get there, even with massive subsidies from the Soviet Union, just like Cuba. The Cuban and Chinese economies only got as far as they did due to massive subsidies from the Soviet Union. Once the Soviet Union fell apart and stopped funding those countries' economies, then Cuba's economy and China's economy essentially fell apart. Not as badly as Venezuela, but Cuba's economy never recovered. China's only recovered after they moved to a semi-capitalistic system where
it's a hybrid.
it's a hybrid of capitalism and communism.
Yeah, I heard some kind of what do they call those people that are experts at this stuff, but economists or whatever. And then he was talking. He was saying, "Look at China. Look at the example. Their capitalism done right. They've done away with all the bad parts of capitalism. And we should look at their government as an example." And I'm like, I don't think so, man. The things they do to their people, it's horrible. It's not a great example, for something that we should look at and then try to emulate. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah, I think it comes again mostly down to ignorance, and ignorance often gets confused for stupidity, but they're two totally different things. Ignorance is simply a lack of knowledge, and stupidity is a lack of intelligence. Ignorance can be cured by acquiring knowledge. There's no cure for stupid.
You can't educate yourself.
No, you can cure ignorance through educating yourself, but if you're stupid, you're stupid.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is, so often I hear people get accused of being stupid when they don't know something, and it has nothing to do with their intelligence level. If they're not aware of something, they're not aware of it, but you help them become aware of it and problem solved.
Yeah. I think a lot of the people that are backing or more socialistic in mind and are kind of backing those ideas, I think those are wishful thinking people. I think they're very naive in the sense that they think that the world should be completely fair, and the world is not completely fair and will never be fair. I always think like our judicial system, the way we we govern ourselves, those are things that we strive for fair and equality in those things. But as a basic law or as a basic rule of humankind, fair doesn't really exist. It doesn't exist on any level. Like, there are people, just case in point, there are people that can say something just, like it could even be like it's supposed to be humorous, and they say it and they can't get away with it, right? There's a bunch of heat and crap that comes down on them, and they get all kinds of names called. But then there's somebody that's more charismatic, maybe better looking, and they say the same thing or something like it, and they can get away with it. That's a type of fair. That's a type of, or unfair, society. Why can somebody that maybe is a little bit better looking or more eloquent than the other, how come they can get away with some things that maybe somebody that's not as good looking can't? Those things happen all the time. So just in nature, just as a a basic, the way we're born, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the natural world. You know what I mean? Like, fair is an ideal. Fair is something that we strive towards, but it should only exist in the way we govern ourselves. It doesn't really exist in the real world, because in a society like what we have, you would just reduce everybody to the lowest common denominator.
Right.
We wouldn't be able to have the freedoms and to be able to explore those personal goals and to have those personal those victories like that. Like, it's so weird. Like, even something as stupid as, Amanda works at Starbucks, and I guess a lot of waitresses and waitering jobs work like this, where like the tips at the end of the day get divvied up amongst all of the waiters and waitresses that work that shift. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, if I give a tip, I'm giving a tip to that individual, you know what I mean, that served me. I want that person to have that money because that was my direct interaction with that person. It wasn't with the corporation. It wasn't with everybody else that worked there. It's that one person. And either I tip well, I tip average, or I tip under average based on their service. So then we can get the best service out of that person because we're incentivizing it. If you're incentivizing just an average status quo, that they're going to get every day, because they divvy up everything, then what's the incentive to be a better waiter? What's the incentive to excel beyond that other person? Why do you even have tips at that point? You know what I mean? Because they seem to defeat the purpose. But some corporation thought, oh, this is more fair, Yeah,
I've when I've had conversations with people about it, I've essentially said the same thing. I think the waitress collecting all the tips and then divvying them up, I think it's a great example of someone who did not earn the higher tip is nevertheless receiving money for something that they did not do. How is that fair?
Right, exactly. But yet the corporation looks at it as it's more fair.
Right. And then on the flip side, the person who did go above and beyond what would be considered the average level of service to earn that money is taken away from them. How is that fair?
Exactly. But that's the way you and I think. Right. But like Starbucks, which is where my daughter works, and my wife worked her way through college as a waitress. And so she'd say she'd hustle her ass off for those tips. You know what I mean? Like, she would smile. Even if she felt bad, she knew that if she was going to make her money that day, she had to put all of her pettiness aside, and she had to be the best waitress that she could. And now, if you're just going to make an average, every day, then why do you even care?
Right. Well, to your point, Matt Nolan in the chat said tips are evenly divided among the dealers at the casino I work at. It helps out the crabby dealers and hurts the good dealers.
Exactly. And that's socialism in a nutshell. Or this idea of being fair.
Right. You're appeasing the quote-unquote problem employees, and you're penalizing the quote-unquote good employees.
Yeah, the ones that excel. And the thing is, at that point, then why don't the corporations or these companies just pay these people more money and get rid of tips?
Right.
The reason they don't is because the tips now, they claim it as income. You know what I mean? Like, before, it used to be you get a fair wage and tips. Now it's like most of those people are just, working for the tip.
Yeah, it's, a restaurant is able to operate at a profit if they keep their expenses lower and the revenues higher. And one of the ways that a restaurant controls its expenses is to encourage its wait staff to earn, relatively speaking, more money by providing better service.
Right.
And if you stand back and look at the whole thing objectively, at least on paper, it's win-win-win, because the business can keep that part of its expenses lower when it comes to paying its staff. The waiters and waitresses are encouraged to provide better service, and in reward, they get more money. And then the customers, if they're receiving better service, they're encouraged to give more money, and they have incentive to come back to that restaurant and be repeat customers instead of one-time customers. And businesses live on repeat business.
Yes. Yeah, it's a win-win in the way you framed it up. But, somebody figured out that it wasn't fair or equitable, and has to change the system. And I believe that probably the reason that even started was, I think that those businesses didn't want to pay their employees more money. So they wanted to make sure that each one of them made a certain amount and divvied it up that way. It's almost in lieu of paying them a good wage.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard arguments, to be fair, I've heard arguments about paying the wait staff more and eliminating tips. And I know that there are some restaurants, some high-end restaurants actually in New York City, and there might have been another city, or it might have been two restaurants owned by the same guy, both in New York City. I don't remember the details, but essentially he was trying this experiment to see if by paying their wait staff higher wages and eliminating tips, if the level of service would improve across the board through all the wait staff. Essentially he was trying to incentivize everybody to provide better service, not just the ones who were making the most in tips.
Right.
And his thinking was, if he could incentivize everybody to provide better service, then a higher percentage of customers will be at least satisfied, if not happy. And then he's hoping that it would turn around and produce a higher percentage of repeat customers. I don't know what the result was. I'd have to try and look that up sometime to see if it worked out the way he was hoping it would.
It's not a bad idea. I just don't think you need to change it at all. You just need to, make sure that it works, like that it's implemented properly each and every day. That's the thing about like people that, I was gonna go off on a tangent. Maybe we should tangent here. Did you have anything else that you have prepared that you want to talk about?
Well, if you...
I just don't want to bore people with the same too long.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Originally I thought that there were some things about this Harley Quinn and Birds of Prey movie and how it failed so hard. That it had me thinking about Harley Quinn as a character, and our talk about socialism and communism and what's fair and all that actually ties into some stuff that I had heard and read about with the Harley Quinn movie.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, let's talk about that.
So that might be a nice time to segue into that. And essentially what I had been running across the last few days were people saying things like, it's not, because we were talking about fairness, right?
Right.
And people were saying, oh, it's not fair that people, especially men, will go watch these movies that are loaded with male actors and there's lots of action and so forth. But when certain filmmakers try to do the same type of thing with mostly female cast, then those movie goers don't turn up. And they were saying how that's not fair. And I remember hearing that excuse with Ghostbusters 2016, the all-female remake of Ghostbusters.
Right.
Flopped really hard at the theater. And then there was
Terminator Dark Fate.
I heard the same type of moaning and groaning about how it wasn't fair and this and that.
Charlie's Angels.
I heard the same thing, and now I'm hearing it again with the Harley Quinn and Birds of Prey movie. And as far as fairness goes, I don't know why. Well, two things. One is, I don't know why people would equate fairness with box office performance when it comes down to, if you're showing previews of the film and you're doing promotional interviews and what you're showing and talking about does not interest people, why should they go see your film? How is it fair to the film goer for you to expect them to see your film if what you're showing them in previews and what you're telling them about in interviews does not appeal to them?
Right. Well, it's almost like it's incomprehensible for the people that made the movie to admit that maybe they just didn't connect. Not even that it's a bad or a good movie, because that's subjective, that it just didn't connect. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't connect in a broader way. Like, some things are just what they are. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing I have a problem with business. Is like, business says you always have to keep growing. You always have to keep growing. Well, some things really will only be what they are. You can't make them bigger unless you change them. You know, like if you're a cheeseburger, you know, like you're a burger place, right? You just make burgers, and then you kind of average out every year at a certain amount. So then you go, well, let's sell chicken nuggets. Well, now you're changing the equation. You know what I mean? Like you're changing it. So you can grow in those ways, but most of the time those companies grow in ways that aren't even connected anymore to what they were. You know what I mean? They start buying other corporations or other companies. They start merging because the product that they initially had is only going to go so far. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why we fundamentally have some problems with business and these things, because nobody's content at what it's supposed to be. Everybody thinks it has to be amazing. Like, there were expectations on that Harley Quinn movie that were not realistic at all from anybody who made that film. Like, it's pretty crazy to think that that's something that's a contrivance of Deadpool. You know what I mean? Like, the reason Deadpool did well is because it was an original. It was outside the box. You know, those guys weren't going, oh, what's the template of success? They created a new template of success.
Right.
So Quinn was just plugging into that. Oh, we're going to go with an R rating. That's really superficial, man. If that's as far as your business sense goes, like, we're going to give it an R rating and then we're going to clean up. Well, that's retarded. And also, most of the people that are into, especially females that are into Harley Quinn, are young girls. Well, now they can't even go see the frickin' movie.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember when we were talking last week, I had mentioned that there's a comic book shop retailer that he's got a YouTube channel. It's called Comics by Perch. P-E-R-C-H, like the fish. And he's active on Twitter. And I remember after the film bombed, I think he did a YouTube video. I know he did a Twitter thread on it. And I remember him essentially going through the reasons of potentially why the film bombed. And what you said, that was one of the biggest points, is if you have this demographic that you seem to be going after, which is young women, why would you make a film that's rated R? Which immediately eliminates the teen market, you know, well, except for 18, I guess, or 17 in some areas. But you've got that going for you. You've got the character looking nothing like, well, this would be my opinion. This is an opinion statement. The character looking nothing like people recognize from the Batman the Animated Series, most of what she looked like in the comics, as far as I can remember. And she kind of looked like the way she did in Suicide Squad, but also, in my opinion, I think her costuming just looks silly in this one. So then you've got that working against the film. And then you've got all of the messaging about being, this is a feminist film and this is for women and this is all about powerful women and so on and so forth, just like we saw with the other films that we mentioned earlier with Ghostbusters and Terminator Dark Fate, etc., etc. And there's a quote here I've got from the director, and ironically, the movie polling afterward said that 53% of the audience that went to see that film, Harley Quinn, 53% were male. So it's not just that men stayed home and that's why the movie bombed. More than half of the audience that did show up was male. But here's what the director said. Ideally, I hoped that the movie would be seen as not alienating to the other half. It had to be fun for everyone and enjoyable. I don't think we were too vicious or antagonistic or aggressive in any way. We don't want it to be alienating. That doesn't serve us.
Oh, now that's what they say.
So, if she's telling the truth, and there's nothing that I've read so far to tell me that she's not, it just seems like she and the producers, Margot Robbie included, have a very unrealistic perception of the average moviegoer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's putting it very nicely. But from what I hear about the movie, there isn't one male character that is worth anything.
Oh, really?
In the movie, that they're all portrayed as either incompetent, dumb, or just basically horrible people.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the Ghostbusters template, where all the guys were kind of jerks, a-holes, idiots. Not one of them was competent in any way, shape, or form. So, they can say whatever they want, but the movie itself is structured in such a way that it doesn't put the other sex in a very good light. You know what I mean? And I think, in this modern climate, I think you can take that as male bashing. I think the message is pretty loud and clear that you're not really trying to make a fair movie where maybe there's a guy that's a jerk, but there's also a guy that's a hero, and vice versa.
Yeah.
That all the one sex is a certain way. There's no redeeming qualities. They're all jerks or stupid.
Well, you got the chance to work at DC when Harley went from being, a bit player in the DC universe to being a very popular character. What do you see in her that was so appealing to comic book fans?
That's a good question. I think she was just a free character. You know what I mean? Like there was the lifestyle of the character. She was just freedom. You know what I mean? Like she, like, her only real vice was her incomprehensible connection to Joker, like why she thought he was the be all end all. But that was really the only thing like that she had against her. You know what I mean? As far as like anything that would inhibit her as far as freedoms. And I think probably in a nutshell, it was that she was kind of free. That she just had this free spirit.
Yeah, I know that in Batman the Animated Series, that definitely came across really well. She had that unhealthy psychological attraction to Joker, and they explored that. And then they also, explored, I think more so in the comics. DC experts would have to correct me if I get this wrong, because I wasn't collecting when this stuff happened. But I remember reading about different storylines where they would show that Joker and Harley were really codependent. But then other storylines, if I remember correctly, showed that Joker kept her around, but it wasn't really like he was dependent on her.
Right.
So I never really understood. I mean, I understood there was a certain level of appeal, but I didn't understand why DC went from having her as essentially a sidekick to pushing her to the front of the class in so many different media, whether it was video games or comics or now film.
I think she just kind of connected. She just kind of struck a chord with people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
Do you think that she, as far as the comics are concerned, do you think that she works better on her own or as essentially being tied to the Joker?
I really think it depends on who's working on it.
That's a good point. There's been several different versions of her.
Yeah, because I think it can work. It can work both ways. I'm trying to find something, but keep going.
Well, there's some really good comments coming in from the chat. Cam 1138 said nothing is appealing about Harley at this point. She's a pathetic Deadpool ripoff. And I know that for people who saw the film, that seems to be a common thing, both from Suicide Squad and especially with this Birds of Prey film. And then Adrian Blom said Harley later in the cartoons would go against Joker if he hurt innocent people. So there she still has a sense of empathy. In the cartoon, she may have had a wild streak in her for sure, but she still had some sense of right and wrong.
Right, and you got the sense that there was something there that you could appeal to. Like she was kind of crazy, just in the sense that she was hanging out with a crazy person, but that you could reason with her, or you could rationalize with her.
She had some psychological problems, but she was not a murderous psychopath.
Right.
So here's some more comments from the chat. Cam again says both Joker and Harley are wildly overused, crutches for weak storytelling. Sketch says crazy things aren't meant to make sense. Adrian again, Harley in the animated series became more sympathetic. And Central Scrutinizer said once Harley went from the jester suit to the Hot Topic prostitute look, that was the end.
Yeah.
Mighty Joe Young, this is a good point. I have not read Sean Murphy's White Knight stuff, but Mighty Joe Young said he loves her in White Knight by Sean Murphy. And then Cam said White Knight actually did something interesting with her again. And that's something I've read from a couple of other people as well, that they thought that Sean Murphy really did a good job of kind of rehabilitating Harley.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, here's a Harley that I drew up.
Now I know you've got prints of both Harley in the jester suit, and then also her with her hair down and the pink and blue pigtails. Do you notice if there seems to be one look that's more popular than the other?
There is not, actually. It's about a 50-50. So there are people that really like the jester suit, and there are people like the other looks. So I'll just put everything else in the other looks. But I have yet to be asked to do a Margot Robbie version. it's usually like the video game version or the comic book or cartoon version or those. It's not the film version. I know there's a lot of fan art and stuff out there that has, the Margot Robbie version, but I've never been asked to draw that.
That's interesting. So when you got requests for it, it was more from the Arkham video games?
Yeah, Arkham video games and just like the Jester outfit.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I should have said in addition to the Jester outfit. But when you would get requests for the pigtail look, you think that was from the popularity of the video games?
Yeah. But I think I've drawn more of Harley in the Jester suit than the others, because the others aren't consistent. Like this look, I didn't do multiple versions of when I was commissioned. It's really just this one piece of artwork. So I think there's a lot of different, people's tastes, but most of them, I would say, are the cartoon version.
Yeah, I know when I was watching the animated series, when it was coming out in the 90s, I thought she was an interesting character. I thought the voice acting was fantastic for both Joker and Harley.
I think as far as adding something to the Joker's mythology, I thought it was an excellent idea. And it really did work, kind of bringing a love interest and just this kind of twisted relationship aspect to the Joker, which I thought was pretty cool. There was like in the day, like in the 70s or whatever, there was like a Harley Quinn type character. Was it like the Joker's daughter, or like there was like a female Joker, and I think her name was Harley Quinn. So there was a character that was like a jester back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't think she was anything like what Bruce Timm and Paul Dini did with the animated version. I thought it was a pretty good idea, and it was a great extension to, like I said, the Joker mythology. And that's what we should do. Like not getting off on a tangent too much, but how like DC is now trying to reinvent itself with it's G5 or whatever. I don't think we need to go to that extremes. I've said it before on Pontificators. I think if they just made like a corporate mandate and said, we're going to incentivize great villains, we're going to incentivize great supporting characters to all of our IPs, Superman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, all of those IPs, and make it like a profit sharing type thing, where you basically have, creators that get to reap the rewards of their creation. Because a lot of reasons you don't see this happening in these corporate companies like DC and Marvel is because there's no profit in it. Like, why would you, after hearing all the stories about Lin Wein getting ripped off from all the X-Men stuff that he's created, and you hear about the Superman creators and all that other stuff, why would you, as a creator, why would you want to just give one of these entities a creation unless you were going to get something in response?
Right.
So I think like if they incentivized an initiative and had all the creative people the same contract, it doesn't matter if you're Jeff Johns or if you're whoever else is like the lesser guy that's a writer over there, they all benefit the same way. Like it's the same contract across the board, so it doesn't play favorites. So anybody that comes up with a concept or an idea that the company sees worthwhile will basically have a profit sharing in that character that they created, and then they can exploit it and use it in whatever fashion that they want. And I think as a corporate mandate, if you're going, I don't believe in corporate mandates unless you have really, really good leadership, which, most of the time, most of these corporations don't. The last really good leadership we've seen was Kevin Feige, for Marvel. And so, and then you realize bad leadership is what leads to the Star Wars franchise falling apart. So you can see it in modern day, like how it works, but this doesn't really have anything to do with them coming up with answers. They're just incentivizing somebody else to come up with answers. You know what I mean? And then you have your whole talent pool putting their collective, creative hats on and trying to come up with the next Harley Quinn or whatever the hell it is. And then DC gets to decide who's in and who's not. So you still have, the corporation gets to make the final, approval on what gets in and what doesn't. But I think then you have a chance of bringing fresh blood and fresh ideas into the mythology in a more organic, natural way that doesn't change, or shake up everybody's, idea of what the DC universe is.
Right. Well, the chat has. I asked the chat to enlighten us about what they think that Sean Murphy's Harley got right, because several people had said that he had done a good job rehabilitating the character. And so I'll read you some of their responses. Cam was saying that Harley actually had a motivation beyond chaos, and that it played off of the different take Murphy had on the Joker as well, which does make a lot of sense to me. I think it's smart to have, if you're going to rehabilitate a character like that, then it also makes sense that you would work with what you're also doing with the Joker. Mighty Joe Young says she's her own person with a backbone. There are actually two Harleys. Baron Von Taco Cat said, I like Harley being loyal to the Joker, not some liberated girl gang member. She is supposed to belong to the Joker. And then to your point, Art, about a version in the 70s, a couple of people were saying that in the Teen Titans, there was a character called Harlequin, and it was also known as Joker's daughter.
That's the character, yeah.
And that Harley Quinn was inspired by the original Harlequin character.
Yeah.
And then Spike and Madness said that Murphy's Harley was smart and sweet, compassionate, and still strong-willed, and that Marion Drews was the obsessive type. Which, correct me, chat, if I'm getting this wrong, but it seems like Marion Drews would be the second Harley. Is that right?
In that White Knight story?
In the Murphy verse?
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. It definitely was interesting. But they could do that throughout the entire franchise. They could incentivize that to all the creative people. And then all of a sudden you can get all kinds of fresh and new ideas in there. Because I think that the hero's only as good as the villain. And if you want to refresh the hero, do it through the villain. Give the hero a new thing to fight against.
Right. And if you don't have if it's a story where there's not a specific nemesis per se for the hero to go against, then the hero is only as good as the conflict, whatever it is, that you put them in, and they have to overcome to show why they are a hero.
Right. And hell, which one I would incentivize the most is Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman still really does not have an iconic villain that defines her as a hero. And that is probably the single character. And if you think about Wonder Woman as a character, as a franchise, as an IP, it's amazing that she sustained as long as she has without really any iconic villains.
Right.
That's a testament to the character. But just think about how much more amazing she'd be if she had like a really cool villain to fight against. Or
Yeah,
villain.
for sure. It seems like Wonder Woman has, throughout her history, depending on who's writing her and who's in the editorial offices, would either be fighting a who's who of villains, but you're right, not having an iconic nemesis, or she would essentially be helping other heroes fight their villains.
Right. Like Cheetah, that's the only one I can really think about, or the God of War, you know.
Ares.
Yeah, Ares. But Cheetah, really? Like that's horrible. Could you imagine if you know you just have one, and what is Cheetah like? A girl in a cheetah costume? Like that's not even a threat to, a goddess. It's so weird.
Yeah, I know that different versions of Cheetah have been tried, and in some cases she was super powered, and with her claws she could actually hurt Wonder Woman. But yeah, in other variations, she was essentially a woman with a cheetah costume.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Wonder Woman deserves a better villain than that.
Yeah, Cam is saying that George Perez made Ares a major villain for Wonder Woman.
That
So
was
there's an example, a great example, Cam, thank you, of a particular writer who's able to do something great for the character, but then overall, the corporation not valuing a character's legacy, even the establishment of a legacy, not to mention letting it continue. It's kind of
yeah.
hard to have a legacy when you keep rebooting the universe's continuity every 10 years or so.
Yeah, stop with the reboots, and I agree with Cam. I think the best Wonder Woman ever was when George Perez was doing that, because also he was bringing it back to the mythology, and basically, all that supernatural gods and Themyscira and all of those things that were more of like, the Greek mythology and those ideas. And I think that's also what makes her very original, is that that's her lineage, that's her backstory. Out of the Trinity characters, out of all the mainstream DC characters, actually, she's the only character that has that kind of background story. And I think that's pretty killer. It's a pretty cool place to be.
Yeah, I think that I don't know, I'm not sure how you would put it. The effective use of her lineage has been wildly up and down throughout her history.
Yeah. I don't think they know what to do with the character. And I remember reading about when they were trying to do the movie, like there's not a whole lot to work with. You know what I mean? Like there's no real definitive like Wonder Woman storyline, or you know what I mean? Like there's nothing to really hold on to as far as what do you accent, what do you build off of? There's not a whole lot.
Yeah, they had to assemble a narrative using bits and pieces from the character's publication history.
Yeah, and I think they failed. They still failed miserably doing that. Like the in the movie, the last third, the last act of that movie completely falls apart. And Ares is an interesting character, but they just turn him into like Magneto at the end, and he just becomes like, your average, mustache twirling villain.
Yeah, I went into that movie with low expectations, and the first 2/3 of it I found enjoyable. I mean, there were definitely flaws in it, but overall, I was entertaining. I was pleasantly surprised, and I was enjoying it. And then I think that casting David Thewlis as Ares was a big no-no.
Yeah.
And the way that they decided to show him in that CG suit, I just thought that whole final sequence, battle sequence at any rate, was just awful.
Yeah, it was disgustingly bad. Like it was obviously bad. Like how would this even get past anybody? Like you said, it's almost comical when you see him. It's the same face like that they just cut out and put it on a muscular guy's body.
Right.
Like,
And that ridiculous mustache is trying to poke its way out of the helmet.
right. It was so weird. Like, like that scene when they're in no man's land, and I know that some people have a problem with the thought, like it doesn't quite work with like logical, like reality of like warfare and things like that. But for the sake of the 2-hour movie, it was pretty good. And then you have one of the, I think this is how far I'll go. It's one of the best superhero moments in film is that trench warfare scene. I'll, as far as personally, I'll put it up there with the best Marvel movies or the best superhero moments in film. You have that level of genius, right? Emotional and just badassery, and then your climax doesn't even come close to that scene. Like it doesn't even come. It's not even 10% of that scene. You know what I mean? It's bad.
Nowhere near, both in terms of storytelling impact, in terms of technical competence as far as the special effects were concerned, and in terms of the, I'm trying to think of how to say this. So there's this big $10 word that storytellers sometimes use called verisimilitude, right? And for anyone in the chat who's not familiar with it, it essentially comes from a Latin phrase, veritas meaning truth, and similitude is where we get our English word of similar. And so essentially it's similar to the truth or the appearance of reality. And I think that trench warfare scene, even though there is a significant element of fantasy to it, I thought that the best part about it is that it showed Wonder Woman absolutely owning the duty that she felt she had to her allies in that fight. And she was going to do absolutely everything she could in her power to help win that battle. And she was going to try to save as many lives as she could while doing it.
Right.
It wasn't enough to win. She also had to watch out for her allies. And so I was watching that, and I've known a lot of combat veterans over the years. And I myself did not serve in the military. I've had health problems that kept me out, and I also had some other life circumstances that kept me out. But I have a lot of friends and family members who are combat veterans, and one of the things that I learned from them that they value when they're on, in a combat theater is the things that people do for each other, in service to each other. And that is one of the things that really builds tight bonds among people who serve in combat together. And I just thought that, again, this is coming from someone who did not serve in combat. I just thought that trench warfare scene did a great job of showing that Wonder Woman really earned those soldiers' respect and awe because of what she did and how she did it. Now, contrast that to the scene with Ares, where it just looked laughably bad, and it was just such a letdown for me as a film goer.
Yeah, and then they just turn him into Magneto, like he just has magnetic powers and starts bending steel and things. And then the most confusing part was at the end, all those soldiers, the bad guys, what all of a sudden they had love in their heart. Like I thought it was not supposed to be like Ares put a spell on them to lead them to war, like that they were in control of their own destinies. Well, if that was the case, then how come they acted like there was some kind of spell that was cast over them, right? Because then they're hugging each other at the end, and
yeah, I don't know.
Like love is in the air. Like, well, if it wasn't some kind of supernatural like spell, wouldn't they still be combatants? Wouldn't they still be like fighting them?
Yeah, I got the distinct impression that there were competing interests behind that movie.
Oh, yeah, the two camps.
It seems like one of those classic cases of the director and certain producers have one vision for the story, and then the studio and other producers have a different vision, and they're going to have a knockdown drag out, and then whatever is left over when it's time to release the movie, that's what we get to see.
Yeah, because I don't think Patty Jenkins had a lot to do with the end. I credit her with the first 2/3. It went into like Zack Snyder verse.
Yes.
The last act. It became some kind of cheesy video game adventure.
Yep. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, and it was so day and night. The whole tone and the reality and everything that was set up just fell apart in that scene. Even though there was some heart still in there, like you could see that Patty Jenkins was still fighting for, like, there'll be the Steve Trevor sacrifice and the watch and all that stuff, but everything else just reeked of Zack Snyder.
Yeah, Cam was saying overall, I think Wonder Woman was actually pretty good. And he also said he loved Wonder Woman's naivete. It made perfect sense for her. And I agree. Overall, I did enjoy the movie, and I did buy the Blu-ray. My wife and I went and saw it together. We both enjoyed it. We bought the Blu-ray, and so, and I do agree with you, Art. I think that Patty Jenkins did get some of what she insisted on having towards the end of the film, especially the way it wrapped up with her in the museum and kind of remembering what had happened in her past.
Yeah, it's a shame that she had to compromise her vision, because I don't really know for sure, but it just doesn't seem like you could have the first 2/3 of that movie be so like the way it was done, and then all of a sudden it just devolves into a cheesy video game. And after watching Zack Snyder films, you realize that all of his villains are pretty laughable. They all become like these really cheesy kind of video game characters.
Right. Even Aquaman, as much as I think it was an improvement in the sense of not taking itself so seriously that it the filmmakers forgot we're supposed to have fun with superhero films.
Right.
At least for the most part. There's always exceptions, of course, but and of all, of any type of superhero themed franchise, you have DC, the bright, hopeful, optimistic, fun comics of yesteryear, and you're going to make the darkest, dingiest group of films for your franchise. I never did understand that move. And then you have Aquaman, who they tried to learn from the mistakes of Batman versus Superman and Justice League and Man of Steel, but there were still, I got taken out of that movie several times, even though I thought it was a lot more fun and entertaining. There were times where I got taken out of that film just because of the bad special effects, and it was so effects heavy.
Yeah, I think like for me, being in the comic industry as long as I have, and kind of having an insight on DC Comics. I think DC Comics doesn't like themselves. I don't think they're very proud of the characters and their history and their lineage. I think they secretly always want to be Marvel. And I think they're always chasing, this Marvel way of doing things, but never realizing that they have a really successful brand unto itself. All they have to do is not be ashamed of it and play it up. They have a lot of aspects that Marvel does not have. And I think that they could play those up, and that those things, the things that they kind of loathe or don't think are that interesting, I think could be the strong points. And I think they're always looking, like when I would do the Superman summits, they'd go, well, how do we make Superman more interesting? We bring in gray area, justice. We bring in gray area politics. We make him edgy. We do all these things. It's like, no, I mean, Superman's cool because he's Superman. Have him continually do cool Superman kind of things. Have him always do what his namesake says. He's already complicated in his incarnation, in his birth. He's a human that's a god. I'm not comfortable when they call him a god, but you know what I mean, just to use their terminology.
Lowercase g.
Yeah, so he has the powers. He's a Superman. He can do anything, but he has the everyman's mentality, and that's what keeps him grounded. I think that's a pretty complicated idea just unto itself. How does an everyman with the powers of a Superman deal with things? Write it like that. Just write it like that, and you find you have an interesting character, and then if you want to bring in like sarcasm, cynicism, gray area stuff, have that affect the world that he lives in, but not him.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that as a writer and as a storyteller, and even as an editor too, I want to bang my head against the wall every time I hear somebody at DC, whether it's a writer or an editor or an artist, talk about how Superman is so difficult to get right, because in my opinion, you hit the nail right on the head. What you do is show all of that gray or grittiness or dark stuff happening around him, and you contrast that to him.
Yeah.
You explore those things around him, and then you show through him, how you get through the darkness, how you find hope when all around you seems hopeless, that sort of a thing.
Yeah, and I know what they'll say, because I've heard all these arguments that go, yeah, but no one will think that that's interesting. No one will find, because he's a goody, and nobody likes a goody, and then he'll preach, down to everybody and things like that. But it's like we said earlier, well, how come some people can say some things and they absolutely resonate with people, and how come others can't? How come people can do the same exact things and be hated or worshipped? So the thing is, what you do with Superman is you create such a character that he's so damn likable that, you know what I mean? Like, even though he's a square, he's boring or whatever, he'll always do the right thing, that you still love him in spite of that. They did it with Captain America in the movie. Why can't they do that in the comic for Superman?
Oh, and the first two Superman films, the Dick Donner films, I mean, you had DC coming out of almost total collapse in the late 70s. And then they turn around and they have the Superman 1 and 2. They have the Super Friends cartoon. They have a whole bunch of licensed merchandise coming out surrounding the cartoon and the Superman films. And suddenly DC has this renaissance in the 80s. Now, the 80s were possibly the most self-absorbed, narcissistic, greedy decade of the last 50 years. And if DC could have had a resurgence in that environment, then I don't believe that people wouldn't buy into characters like the traditional Superman or the traditional Wonder Woman in today's culture.
Right. And maybe that contrast is what is actually needed. You know what I mean? Like, instead of doing what you think, like, I always liked the original Fox business model when Fox Network started. They were counter programming to the three mains, NBC, CBS, ABC. So
Right.
they were going to do counter programming, and you know what? It worked. Not just the idea, but the execution. They were. I mean, Married with Children, I think, is debatable as far as quality, but I think it was the move in the right direction. It set the tone. It was the template for what came later. They honed it. They made it better each time that they went out after that. But then you have X-Files. You have all these shows that are outside the box, and I think that that kind of idea can really work. So if you're saying that nobody in society is going to buy the fact that there's this goody-goody, well, maybe that then becomes your hook. That becomes your selling point. It's like the first Superman. Basically, their mission statement for the movie was, "You will believe a man can fly." The reason that became the marketing is because it was such a monumental task just to create the effects for that guy to fly. They realized if they couldn't do that, they don't even have a movie. So
Yeah.
that became the thing that they embraced. They embraced that one thing, and I think that if DC was to just go, this is who this guy is, this is what our universe is, and just go, well, it's not contemporary, it's not what kids today want, that just maybe, if you can really connect to it, be sincere with it, and really commit to it, you might find that it's refreshing. Because also, case in point, Star Wars, historically, one of the reasons, and they don't talk about it a lot with the 74, 77, 78, the original Star Wars, is because it was a hopeful movie that came out of a landslide of 70s movies that were disaster filmed and everything, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And there was a lot of really dark films that came out around that time. This was a hopeful film. You know what I mean? And because it played against what everybody thought was popular and gave some hope, even the story became The New Hope, wasn't it? Didn't it later become, like, they named it?
Yeah, after Lucas, once he realized that he had a successful franchise on his hands, he rebranded. So the original movie, when it came out in 77, it was just Star Wars. And then there was The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but then he rebranded to Star Wars A New Hope.
Gave it a title.
Off of the crawl. Yeah, the title crawl.
Right. And the thing is, like, it says it right there in the title. It was hope. Mm-hmm. It was hope in a time where every cinematic movie had some kind of down, aspect, some kind of really dour version of a story.
Yeah, the 70s were the decade of depressing film.
Yeah. And so people don't talk about that much, that actually, they talk about, the special effects and all those other things. It was also just a product that swam upstream. It was a product that played against a lot of the filmmaking that was being done at the time. And I think that's take the chance, take a chance, play against type, and maybe give people a new hope, you know?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that going back to your point about DC, not liking itself, I agree with what you had said, and I agree with what you're saying now too, with as far as film goes. I was curious, which year did you start working for DC?
I started working, I think it was 84.
Okay, so you got to see the changing of the guard from the EIC down a few times, right?
Yeah.
There was Jeanette Kahn,
Yeah.
and then there was Paul Levitz. Did he come after Jeanette Kahn?
Well, they both worked the same. They just had different titles.
Okay.
So Jeanette was the president. I think Paul was like vice president or something. He ended up becoming the president when
Okay.
Jeanette stepped down. And then there was Dick Giordano, who was the editor in chief, and he was great.
I was going to ask you, because everything I've read about Dick Giordano and anybody who worked with him or for him just had nothing but great things to say. And it seemed to me like once he left, that's when the attitude or the culture, I should say, seemed to change, just as a reader, from a reader's perspective.
Yeah. It's weird that historically speaking, like when you see like even like the Watchmen movie behind the scenes stuff, it's Jeanette Kahn and Paul Levitz that are really talked up in that. But Dick Giordano was the editor in chief. And the thing is that all that year one stuff, Crisis, all those things, a lot of that was on his watch. So he kind of gets written out of the history books, maybe because he's gone, he's no longer with us. But I think the more powerful entities are kind of claiming a lot of the victory. And I'm not saying they didn't have anything to do with it, because they did. But I do know a story because Dick and I, not that we were really, really close, but he liked me, and that was kind of, it was really neat. And he used to call me his boy, and he and Pat used to come to LA. And so whenever they would come to LA, they would kind of call me up.
Pat being his wife?
Pat was his assistant.
Oh, his assistant. Okay.
Yeah. And so, we would go out to dinner and we would talk and things like that. Case in point, one time they were staying at the Universal Sheraton and they were filming Batman 2, the Tim Burton film. And he asked, she was my girlfriend at the time, Pamela, to come down. We hung out with him in his hotel room, and we talked about the Tim Burton film, and we had room service. We just kind of hung out, and that was it. There was nothing asked of me. There was nothing. We just hung out.
That's cool.
And I remember him like, here's the script, and he was telling me what the new movie was going to be. And still to this day, I don't know why. Like, I was kind of a nobody.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just kind of a really cool thing. And he was telling me that he had this idea for an older Batman, a retired Batman. And that, he kind of is needed again and comes out of retirement. And it was basically Dark Knight Returns. And he told me, he said, I wasn't the right person to draw it, though. And so it's kind of a little known fact that the idea wasn't Frank Miller's.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually Dick. But Dick was so generous that he gave that idea to Frank Miller. Yeah. And would it have been as good if Dick did it? Probably not. but even Dick would tell you that,
Right.
you know. But it just goes to show you, like good leadership, you know, all the year one stuff, you know, all that came out of that. He was there as well. It wasn't just Jeanette and Paul.
Yeah, that's a great point. He did a lot for DC and for creators specifically. I know that so many have sung his praises when they were talking about their careers or this particular character or that particular storyline. And I did read an interview with Frank Miller where he credited Dick Giordano with the idea.
Yeah, I think that's a sign of a generous leader, you know, that is like, I'm thinking about the company. I'm thinking about the overall, and not that I'm throwing shade at the new DC, but the leadership at DC seem like they're still kind of like, yeah, we're going to do this new thing, but we're going, like, Jim's going to draw it, or Jeff Johns is going to write it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they gave it to somebody else. They were still kind of involved.
Right.
You know? And I remember that Marvel had this policy. They may have changed the policy, and I always thought it was good that they always looked at it as a conflict of interest if an editor was a writer, or if an artist was an editor, you know, because then they could kind of hire themselves, or take these good projects and do them themselves, you know. And I always thought that was pretty cool. And I think that these companies would be better off to do that. Having said that, though, if I had somebody like Jim Lee, you know, I would definitely want him to draw. I would want him to draw more than I would actually want him to be my boss.
Yeah, well, he's got a never-ending supply of fans who would say the same thing. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard or read somebody say, "What's he doing as an executive? He should be drawing comics."
Yeah, I'd rather see him draw the comics than you know, make these editorial decisions.
Yeah. Well, it's been a blast, Art, but I gotta run.
All right, man.
We're at the 2:00 mark.
Well, I do appreciate it. Let me stop for a minute so I could bid you adieu properly. So, yeah, thank you so much, Albino, for coming in and hanging with us, and kind of helping with the heavy lifting. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'd be happy to join you anytime.
Yeah, we'll do this in the future. I think this is really starting to work out. It gives me time to focus. I believe I got way more work done today than I would have if I was manning the chat myself. So I do really appreciate it. And you have a great rest of the day.
All right, you do the same.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, see you later, everybody.
I don't know if he clicked out. Oh, there he goes. Well, it's just us. It's just us again. It's you and me. So yeah, I'm almost done. So we're 2 hours into this. So I believe I can get the bulk done in the next hour. So yeah, I thought that was good conversation. I like this community, and it was fun touching base with Joe. He bought some artwork at the EVS auction, and he lives within driving distance from where I do, and so he just said, "Hey, let me take you and your wife out to dinner, and I'll pick up the artwork." So we were like, "Yeah, cool." And so we did, and we had this marathon dinner, just talking about comic books and stuff like that. and we ended up talking the whole night, drinking beers and just hanging out and talking comic books. And we really connected. I thought it was, it's a lot of fun when you meet people and then you're just like, wow, it's like I've known this guy for my whole life. And it was that kind of thing. So then we were talking, and I guess it just came up that how difficult it is sometimes to get work done and man the chat. And the reason I want to do this is I want to keep up, presence on YouTube and hang out with you guys. But sometimes it's a little difficult when I have so much work to do. So to combine the efforts is ideal for me. And so he was like, yeah, well, let's do this thing. I can hang out, I can bring stuff to the chat, and we can talk. And that's kind of how that worked out. And then I have another person who's very, very cool, and I want to do another show with him, is Death Metal Hero. Exceptionally cool guy, completely different energy. And I want to touch base with him. And he kind of works in the same capacity, where he'll read the chat, hang out, and it allows me, time to focus more on the drawing and putting the book together. So I really appreciate that. This is a great community, man. It really is. There's a lot of very generous people, willing to give up their time to hang out and make good comics. So I do really appreciate that. And this, man, I can't tell you how excited I am that this is page 60 of Chrono Mechanics, which is the last story page in the book, and how much I'm looking forward to being able to do some other things for a while. It's always sad when you have to finish a project and then move on, because you just have so much energy and time. And so it's kind of like saying goodbye to a good friend. But at this point, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm gonna put time into designing the work in progress Chrono sketchbook, and then put the trading cards together. So that's my next goal. And then just kind of keep art directing on the coloring of the book. At this point, it's all going to come down to the coloring. So, that's going to be the next time-consuming aspect, is finishing it up. Because Jeff Eckleberry, who's going to letter this book, he can letter it really pretty fast. So also Pamela and I are putting some of the writing together, and so we can get that out to the letterer as well. So we did a little bit of writing last night. So we're kind of trying to find our niche and get into some kind of rhythm, so we can get the book written up. Basically dialogue. I mean, it's scripted and everything, and there's a lot of it that's already dialogued up, but just kind of finishing it up, fine tuning it, and then I'll have time to more seriously look into printers, because I don't think we're going to go with a Chinese printer this time out. So that coronavirus and then just delays and stuff like that, I think it would be better to go to the, in the United States, which is what I would rather do. I always wanted to do anyway, but I just heard that the China pricing is always the best. So through this community, a lot of people have found other printers that are in the United States here that have pretty good prices and that have great, that they do great work. So I'm going to be looking into that in the coming days as well and try to set all those things in motion so we can get this book done and into your hands on time, which is my major goal, is to do that. And also, I have a little treat. So everybody that has stayed through the whole stream will get a little preview of my next campaign. So I have a piece of artwork that I'm going to show you guys. I'm very, very proud of it. It came out amazing. And I'm going to be partnering. It's kind of a group effort, I guess, more than a partnering. And I'll give you guys the details in a bit. So I'm going to ink a little bit more, and then I'll go to the chat and see how you guys are doing. I appreciate you guys hanging out, man. This is always a blast. And man, that 2 hours went pretty fast. I wonder what Death Metal Hero's doing tomorrow. The Metallic Hero. The light is starting to change in the room. Let me see if I can get some more light in here. Where was I? Oh, I was here. Let's get a little nose. Doug's nose. Inking small. You must be very delicate. All right, let's get some wild hair here. Man, it's noisy today. Trash truck. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays are the noisiest days around here. Tuesday because the gardeners, Wednesday, wait a minute. Is Wednesday the trash truck day? Yeah. And Saturdays because the neighbors have their gardeners. That's good. color in here. Little jawline action. Okay. Boom. So here's where I'm at so far. Pretty much the bottom two panels are done. So I'm bringing these three together live. So this is page 60, the last page of the book. Let's see. Let's go back in time in the chat. Good stream, Art. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Let's see what this is. Cryptic Comics. Jim Lee used to stream every weekend on Twitch. Since his promotion, he barely streams once a month. He's lost the connection with his fans. Yeah, well, maybe. I think that he should be more of a business guy and less of a fan favorite. I think he needs to take that hat off and start focusing on DC Comics. That's just me personally. Personally, if I had my way, I'd like to see him just draw everything versus running a company. But that's just my selfishness. Yeah, I think it's I've seen those, but it was so much fun when he would stream more often. Yeah, I used to watch those too. It's fun to watch Jim Lee draw. It really is. Oh, Kevin, this is one of my favorite campaigns at the moment. Well, thank you, brother. And you have been a big reason why it is so successful. So I appreciate all the support, my friend. You are one of the good guys. Black and White Second Chance was the next campaign. It's they may overlap. It really depends, because the one thing I want to make sure that I do is that I get Chrono Mechanics in a place where you guys trust that it will come out and that you will get the book on time. So the reason why I haven't done a lot of this stuff yet is because I really want to prove to you guys that I'm good and that I will fulfill this and be as transparent with it as possible. So Black and White is pretty much done. I think there's seven backers that haven't got their books yet, because I need to do 7 more sketches. And as soon as I do that, Black and White will be completely fulfilled. The campaign will. So everybody who backed that, I thank you. Much appreciated. It was a dream come true. 25 years in the making. So I do appreciate that. But I want to make sure that I know for sure that you guys trust me to fulfill Chrono Mechanics before I do the others. The reason why the next 2 campaigns is, one, the Second Chance stuff, all those books are already printed. So as they get ordered, we can fulfill those. So you don't have to worry about waiting for the book to get printed and all those other things. So that's the good part about the Second Chance. So even though Chrono will hopefully be at the printers by then, well, actually Chrono will still be getting colored up. So Chrono will still be in process of getting finished when the next campaign comes out. But I'm hoping that there'll be enough that's done and enough goodwill that I have put out there into the community that you guys will trust that that I'm good for fulfilling chrono. So you know what? Now that we're talking about it, I'm just going to cut to what is going to be the next campaign. My wife and I worked a little bit putting it together, the Indiegogo page together this morning. So let me do this. I think if I click this, and this. So hopefully you can see this. I didn't want to give the whole thing away yet. So this is black and white with Vampirilla. So Vampirilla is celebrating her 50 years. 50 years, man. You talk about an icon. It's such a privilege to have my characters that are 25 years young hanging out with this 50-year-old, but she doesn't look a day over, I don't know, 19, 20. So yes, this is the next campaign. So Dynamite is going to be furnishing the books, so they're going to take care of some of those aspects, some of the behind the scenes aspects. And the cover is already done, like I've penciled and inked it. And these are the great Kyle Ritter's colors. So the colors are done. So as far as really my affiliation with it, it's pretty much done, with the exception of running the campaign, which I'll be doing. And this should be going up hopefully sooner than later. And that's why it's so important that I show you that page 60 of Chrono is being done. There's 2 more pages that I have to ink up, but they're pretty much done other than that. Well, a lot of it is already inked. It's more or less just finishing those 2 pages, which should not take me very long. So then this will be the next campaign. And then the second chance for the black and white book itself. So it might overlap with this one. I don't know. I just got to kind of see how things work out organically and then play it by ear. And also, just see what you guys have to say, see how you feel about it. Because if you guys are gung-ho, I'll put out another campaign. I just want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with the fact that I'll be running another campaign, while Chrono is still being, put together. But like I said before, they're done. Like all the black and white books are done, and the black and white Vampirilla cover is done. Hey, Pamela, how do you say, is it Vampirilla? Vampirilla? How do you say it?
Vampirilla?
Vampirilla?
I guess, yeah.
I always want to say Vampirilla. It's Vampirilla.
You want to get in there what she is.
Yeah. So this will be the next campaign. I was telling them that we were putting the page together this morning.
Mm-hmm.
What are you eating?
Those.
Oh my gosh. These things are so good. I'll show them, but I want to eat one. What are these? They're chocolate, coconut, and what's inside of them?
An almond.
It's almond chocolate coconut.
From Costco.
I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. These things here.
Costco is awesome.
They're so darn good. Those are baby almonds. Are they chopped up almonds?
I don't know. I just bite.
They're so good. They got something else in them. That's not just... There's a special ingredient in there. Well, let me go back. It's love. Let me go back. You got to tell them about the campaign.
Oh, I don't know what you've told them.
I told them that this is kind of a teaser. You've seen the whole cover, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think?
I think it's awesome.
It came out really good, huh?
Yeah, it did.
It's so amazing to see, our characters with a 50-year-old legend.
With an established, like you said, legend.
Yeah. So I was talking to to Nick Barucci, who runs Dynamite, and he's the keeper of these IPs. And we were talking about he's going to do a relaunch of the Green Hornet. And if you guys have listened to this channel enough, you know that I'm a huge Green Hornet fan. So he asked me if I wanted to do like a black and white Green Hornet crossover.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Variant cover. Yeah, that would be awesome. And that will be a dream come true for me. Vampirilla is awesome, but you know, the Hornet.
I know you love the Green Hornet.
That's my guy.
Yeah.
Kato, that's my guy. Yeah, those are my guys. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's a little similarity between Black and White and the Green Hornet and Kato.
Mm-hmm.
Just a tad.
Just a wee bit.
Just a smidge. Yeah, so this is going to be the next campaign. And like I said, we're putting it together now. So I'm hoping within the next couple weeks that we'll be launching this guy. And also Chrono Mechanics will be 2 weeks closer to being done. And so we can get that out to the printer. And I was telling them that next week is going to be, you know, putting the art book together, the work in progress book, the trading cards, and then we're going to start finishing up some of the writing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, and looking for a printer.
Yes.
That's a lot.
That's a heck of a lot.
I'm already looking forward to next week. Getting all this stuff done. Getting this stuff closer to, to completion so we can get it in your hands. So, yeah, these are the amazing Kyle Ritter colors. He knocked it out of the ballpark. I think the pencils and inks were pretty good, too.
Oh, tight. Yeah.
They were okay.
Yeah.
It was a good start. I might have a future. So yeah, this is going to be the next big thing from Hack Shack Studios. So you guys, I hope you're looking forward to it. Let me see if I can go back without any problem.
Without losing anyone?
Yeah. So I hope that answered your question, Mighty Joe. So you got a lot more than you bargained for, but you know what? We always do. Mighty Joe Young says, will Oodle's sketchbook also be available? We did a count of how many we have left, right? Of the original Oodle's book?
Yes, we don't have very many at all.
I think we may have 20. And then we have 8 of them with sketches in, like Batman sketch in them. So I think that's all we have left. And I do have planned a Oodles of Doodles and Other Stuff 2 Volume 2 for this year, for later this year as well. So this is going to be a busy year. So we have the Vampirilla Black and White. Then we have the Black and White Second Chance. And so then we have the Oodles of Doodles and Other Stuff 2 Volume 2. And then we'll have the Black and White Volume 2 book, the follow-up and conclusion to the Black and White Volume 1 book that's out right now. Oh, we have Ethan. That looks phenomenal. Thank you so much, brother. I think you're the guy that paved the way. So, yeah, we're branching out, man. Comicsgate is, I think the more we do these things, the more we're going to show the rest of the industry that that we're good guys and that we do good work and that there's merit. And I think that Dynamite is being very open to us. And I know that they're getting a little bit of flack for it. And I wish they wouldn't, but that is the world we live in. So, yeah. So really, really, Ethan, right back at you, man, because you're the guy that opened that door for people like myself. So thank you for that. Yeah. So good colors on Vampy. Yeah. Yes, indeedy do. So let me see. Cryptic Comics says, so oodles of doodles and other stuff too. Yeah, if you guys haven't noticed, I'm a big goof. Yeah, I like silly and dumb stuff. So I think that's why I like comic books so much, because they're kind of silly. So, ooh, I like this. Linkovich says, hail art, hail Uncle E. Yes, indeedy do. Let me see. Cryptic Comics, as long as Dynamite doesn't cave to the whiners, all is good. I think they're made of better stuff than that. I've had some conversation with them, and I think they see the merit in what we're doing. I really do. And in this industry right now, where we were talking early on with what DC is doing, I think people are really scrambling and trying to find their place in this new comic book direction. And I think that not all these conversations you guys are privy to. A lot of them happen behind the scenes, but I do know for a fact there are a lot of people that see the merit in Comicsgate and what we are doing. So I do think that it is only going to get bigger and stronger, and more great books and product is going to come out. Let's see what Kevin says. Man, I think it's this year. Oh, this is. I think this year is going to be so good. Yes, this year is going to be good. I cannot wait to. It's so cool when you ship these. These pages out. Well, you get to see them colored. And then you get to see them lettered up. And then you get to see them printed. And the thing is, too, like when we print these books are okayed by us. These books are by our specs. The thing is, I don't know if other mainstreams have the same thing, but a lot of times I would be disappointed in the production values of some of the books that I worked on in the past. And so I was kind of let down. Like, sometimes the color would be a little dark or a little too saturated, or sometimes the pagination would be wrong or off. Sometimes I wouldn't even get credit in books. Like, they would leave my name out of the credits. I don't think it was malicious. I just think that it was an oversight. It still bugs me and still would hurt. But yeah, that with these, controlling your own destiny and putting these books together, that's a thing of the past, man, because I guarantee you every creator owned book that's done by us is scrutinized by the creator, like, to be the best quality it could possibly be. I had multiple conversations with the printer, tried a couple different printers, talked to them, so it's a matter of, really getting the best. And then, the final say is the artists themselves, because nothing against Marvel and DC, but they're the ones that ultimately get to sign off. And they're not looking for the same things that the artists are. So for the artist to give their seal of approval on the printed book, that means way more than Marvel and DC, because I guarantee you, somebody like Ethan, somebody like myself, we're scrutinizing these books in a different way, for the production value, and to make sure that they're printed and they put our artwork in the best light possible. Because I think most of us also know what it's like to have the product not quite be as good as it could. So that's one of the things I look forward to. Once you get the book done, is to get it into the hands of the consumer and see what they think. And they should know that it is the best quality and that it meets the approval of the artists themselves, which I think holds more weight. There's a little antenna for the chrono communicators here. Bunch of detail, always detail. God, I remember some of when Marvel was, when was this? I think it was kind of the 90s when I was coming back from Image. I couldn't believe that the Marvel books looked so primitive. Like the production was way behind Image Comics, and that it wasn't until they started hiring Image guys like Liquid that their production value started going up, because they just couldn't really match the quality, and the printing wasn't all that good either. So it is one of those things where as an artist, we see it, we scrutinize, and if it's not done well, it breaks our damn heart, man. You put so much into these projects, and when you see somebody drop the ball on them, especially in the final hours, you're just like, oh my gosh, you're only as good as the weakest link. And man, it would break your heart. I've been asked, like, why do you ink more than you pencil? And a lot of the reasoning is because in my early career, I did pencil a lot. And nothing against the different people that have inked me in the past. It was always disheartening. It always broke my heart. So I'd always see like, oh, that's not what I meant to do there. This is a compromise, those type of things. So one of the things when I started inking, more seriously and more full time, I made kind of a declaration to myself that I would never be that inker, for a penciler. I would always make sure that I gave it my all, because I know how much work goes into these books, as far as the art is concerned. So even if I was working, over somebody that I didn't think they weren't quite that accomplished, I always felt like it was my duty to elevate it. What's up?
Oh, just wandering around.
Are you checking in?
Seeing what I can get into.
Are you checking into the chat?
You know me, I just like to see what I can dabble my fingers into every once in a while.
Are you a dabbler?
I am.
Yeah. Well, while you're dabbling, why don't you tell everybody to go over and back CHRONO Mechanics? It's now in demand on Indiegogo.
It sure is. And it is going to be such a good book. I think everyone is going to love reading it and will actually want more stories. I know it's different. It's not superheroes and capes, but it's just a good, funny read.
Yeah, I enjoy working on it too, and that's important. Like if we can crack each other up while we're working on it, then that's what I look for. Like if we can entertain ourselves,
Well, you've got one of my favorite pages up on the site. I think it's the one that's right under Chrono Inc. and it's got Skippy. I love Skippy. He just cracks me up.
I think you like Skippy because he's real innocent and he's just real earnest. You know what I mean? Like that he would never lie to you, that he would only tell you the truth, but in a very like naive, sweet way.
Yeah, he's awesome. He looks after Foreman, makes sure he takes his medication, and eats his bologna sandwich.
Yeah, the foreman might have a heart condition.
he's got some issues going on.
I just thought about something funny. Is like, I think just yesterday I was talking about how if you work for Chrono Incorporated, when you're in the facility there, you don't age.
Oh yeah.
So
and he's 15.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about the foreman. He's got a heart condition, but as long as he's at work, he'll never die. I don't know. Like that's a question we should think about that. If your number is up and you don't, can you die while you're on the job at Chrono Incorporated? Not, when you're outside of the facility. Because the facility, we're saying that you don't age, right? But I guess not aging is different than not dying.
Right.
So he can still have a massive coronary.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite pages. It just makes me laugh. Looking at this little face with those big ears and the hat on, it does it for me.
I like that he's so by the book. He always wears the hard hat. Like even when he's not on the floor, not on the repair floor, he's got the helmet on.
It's just good stuff. It's just a good comic. You can't beat that. I remember as a kid, I used to love getting a comic, and it didn't matter what it was about. I used to read the Wendy, the Little Witch, and Hot Stuff, and what was the chubby kid that was a little boy that was always fat? I forget him, and Richie Rich, and then, of course, Superman, and, all of those. I loved them.
Well, I even remember picking up stupid comics like Baby Huey. Like, the thing is, like, we only had the news rack, and so it wasn't like even the books would come monthly. They would stay on the rack until they sold out. Like, they wouldn't buy new books until they had to. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like we were getting monthly books on any kind of regular basis. And so, you buy the books that you really, really like, like your Batman, Superman. And then like towards the end of the month or whatever, when, all the good stuff has been taken, you find yourself buying like, Richie Rich or like Supergirl. Yeah. Harvey Comics.
Comics,
Yeah. I got a ton of those things. And you know what? The thing is, I remember like they were like my second or third choice, but I still remember enjoying the hell out of them. You know what I mean? It was almost like life was forcing you to try something different, even though you went kicking and screaming, but you still liked it.
Yeah, I just loved reading comics. I would, in the summer, growing up in West Virginia, I'd get up, I'd make a peanut butter sandwich, grab a dog, and my comics and head up into the mountains and sit there all day and read comics, and my Nancy Drews,
Yeah, don't forget Nancy Drew.
Can't forget Nancy Drew. I would take those books. I had a great childhood. My goodness.
Yeah, and the thing is, what was cool about comics is they were portable, so you could take them into the woods and you could climb a tree, and read them and stuff like that. So I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah, you stick it in your pocket and up you go. It's sort of sad that kids today don't have that. You've even said, because you didn't like school really, and you didn't like reading until you got into comics. And then you said it just opened up all new doors. Well, mentally for you.
Yeah, nobody diagnosed me as having dyslexia at the time, so it was a chore to read. And comic books, especially early on, always had a visual with them. So if you couldn't quite get it, you had a picture that backed it up. So it would help you.
I was looking here at Cam 1138. He said the batteries never ran dry. Exactly.
Because there were no batteries. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You were your own battery, and it made the brain work, and it made kids don't have that. I go to Ralph's and I see moms, with their little toddler, in the cart, and they're pushing along, and the kid just wants to talk. And I've seen it so often. The mom just pulls out her phone, puts in a game, and hands the kid the phone. So, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is such a great time. Amanda and I used to, when she was little, I used to have fun pointing at the cans or the bags and saying, what color is this? And, but no, you got to give them the game so that they're quiet, And
pacify them.
Yes, and you can't even go buy a comic now in the grocery store and say, here, read this.
Well, the cool thing about the comic or the grocery store experience for me was it was always bribery to be good. So it's like, if you're good, you get a comic book.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I'll be good. Yeah. I'll sure as heck be good.
It was amazing because people didn't worry about kids getting kidnapped and stuff. And when I'd go to the store with my mom, I would have her drop me off right at the book area, the magazine area. And I would stand there and she would take off and she'd be gone for ages. And I would read Jack and Jill and all the comics and, and then when she was done, she'd come back by and I'd go, can I have this comic? And she'd go, yeah, throw it in there.
Make sure it's one that you haven't read yet.
Yeah, but I didn't care if I read them before.
Oh, I know. You reread them all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kids don't have that.
Well, you have a passion that most people don't for reading anyway.
I love to read.
Yeah. My mom loved to read.
Oh, is it Gonzo the Great says comics are the gasoline of creativity.
Yeah. And the thing is, video games are interactive. Like you have to interact with them for them, to work. But the thing is, you don't have to use your imagination to make them work. You don't have to, you don't interact the same way as you do with a comic book, because a comic book experience is a unique one unto itself. And it's definitely one that is unique to the individual who reads them, because the adventure is whatever you put into it. is what you're going to get out of it, because it doesn't exist on its own. It won't entertain you the way a video game would, or a cartoon or a movie. You can't just be, what is it? You have to participate. You have to be a participant in it.
I like, too, what Mary Needlepoint says when we were apparently talking about the kids and the games, because she says it's the de-evolution of language skills. Exactly. What better time to bond with your little child, especially if you've been at work all day and stuff, to talk to that kid, and make them laugh. I think one of the best things I ever saw a dad do in a grocery store was, it was a huge couple of lines. And this dad was getting a couple of things, and he had a little boy who looked like he was maybe 3.5 or 4. And he didn't want to be in the line anymore. So he was getting antsy. But this dad was so cool. He put his hand up like 3 or 4 inches above the little kid's head. And he goes, jump and try to hit my hand. And that little boy would jump straight up to try to hit his dad's hand. That one little game made that little boy's day. And it stopped him from being, oh, I don't want to be here, to having a ball. And there's nothing like hearing a little kid laugh. It's just the most wonderful thing ever.
Yeah.
And I thought I wish I knew that guy so that I could just go 3 or 4 lines over and say, hey, you are an awesome dad.
Good job.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, believe it or not, those things still exist. There are some good parents out there. I just think that people need to talk about comic books in a passionate way, and in a way that is like unique. Like this is a unique art form. They say, well, it can't compete against these other things. Well, it's different. It's not a video game. It's not a cartoon. It's not TV. But it is a unique art form unto itself. It's a unique form of entertainment.
Well, Gonzo the Great just said 90% of the story and action happens off panel. Our imagination closes the gap between the panels.
Yes, exactly.
And how great is that?
Yeah, you get to interact and be part of it in a way that really only novels can do. Where the only thing you're going to get out of a novel is what you put into it. You know what I mean? Like if you're reading and there's no images, then that's pretty much it. So
Dimitri says, how are you not smudging ink all over the paper?
What do you mean? Am I doing something wrong? Now I'm all paranoid.
No, he says, how are you not smudging ink?
I don't know. I'm careful. I thought maybe I was doing something reckless.
Trust me, Dimitri, there have been times that he does put his arm in it.
That's true. Those are what we call bad days.
And that is never a good day.
And that is never a good day. Thanks, Laura Croft.
My bum went to sleep.
Fascinating. So let me see. What time is it? Are we at the 3 o'clock? Yeah, I should start winding down. This is we're 3 hours into this, so I'll finish this up. You're eating all my lunch there.
Well, they're chips. Bye, everyone. I'm scooting out.
Are you scooting? Well, thank you. Thank you for interacting, Pamela. I think people like to hear you talk.
Oh, sure.
They do. They do. I disagree. Most of the tech can't compete with comics. Yeah, no, that's what I was trying to say. I don't think that those things are even in the same ballpark. I think comic books are so unique outside of that tech that I do agree. I think comic books are amazing, and they're basically an art form unto themselves. They're entertainment unto themselves. It's the only place that you can get this kind of entertainment from, and I think we should be very proud of that. So this is page 60. These other two panels are pretty much done. So I just have this, and then, like I said, there's a little bit of pickup stuff on 2 other pages, but other than that, this issue is, as far as all the storytelling, the pencils and inks will be done by the end of this day. So thank you guys so much for letting me draw for you, hang out, and all that other good stuff. So I'm trying to bring some people in and keep things moving and entertaining for you. So thank you so much, Mary Needlepoint. It was fun. It's always fun hanging out with you guys. Baron Von Taco Cat. It's a taco cat. Very cool. We like it. Well, thank you guys so much for the encouragement. It does help me, come back. It's hard when people hate what you do, but it's easier when people like it. So thank you so much for liking it and supporting me, this channel, the properties, the books I do, my family, just everything. I really, really do appreciate it. And if you haven't, please subscribe. It does help. Give a thumbs up. I would appreciate that. And yet another awesome page. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah. And have yourself a great day. Yeah. And check out CHRONO MECHANICS. It's still in demand. So please check that out. And there's going to be, oh my gosh, hold on for a sec. Let me make sure I get this information right. There's going to be a live stream tonight, and I have a feeling it's going to be a party. And what is it? It's on Crowdfunding Comics, and it's their 100th episode spectacular. So it's tonight, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 o'clock Pacific Standard. And there's just a slew of people. So it looks like it's about 2 hours long. And I think I'm going to be part of this in some fashion. So they got like Jimmy Palmiotti, Anthony Marquez, who was an editor at DC, I think. And I think he's over at Dynamite now. Ethan Van Sciver, Richard Myers, and possibly me. So that's going to be fun. So, I didn't even look at this. I posted this on YouTube. So Graham Nolan is chiming in, Brian Polito on my post. Oh, this is cool. Yeah, I think this is going to be a blast. So you guys check that out. Crowdfunding Comics. That's it's Billy Tucci and was it Niall Scala? Is that how you say his name? And they host the show. So that thing's gonna get crazy for 2 hours with all that talent. It's gonna get nuts. So you guys should tune in for that. So thanks, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.